There have been few forces, elements, or groups that have had much of an effect on the world around us at large as the faction known throughout history as the Horde. Even as the Horde themselves have gone through their own evolutions and phases, from their humble beginnings on Draenor as a tribalistic and shamanistic people, to a demon-fueled war machine, and finally to a collection of peoples trying to survive in a world that fights them at every turn, the history of the Horde has helped define Warcraft lore in the best of ways. Theirs is a story of rage, sadness, and a thirst for redemption as they sought what they lost due to the demon's influence. Theirs is also a stark reminder that you only know what you've lost once you've given it up, and the sacrifices that need to be made to get it back can be heavy and difficult to comprehend. Welcome to Ancient Lore, a discussion series where we peel back the layers of world building and story to examine, understand, and discuss where we came from in the World of Warcraft. Today's topic is the history and timeline of the Horde, and as always, if you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them in the comments section below or connect with me on my Discord. For a complete analysis of the Horde, we have to begin before the timeline of Warcraft 1. While Warlords of Draenor may have made an effort to show what that may have looked like, both geographically and sociologically, for the purposes of this discussion, we'll be discounting any information presented to us past the end of vanilla. This is due mostly to issues with massive inconsistencies that were presented to us with Warlords, as well as some personal issues I have with the Burning Crusade rewrites to Draenei lore and how it changed our understanding of early Horde formation and aggression. Our earliest documentation of what defined the Horde came from the Warcraft 1 manual, from the writings of Garona of the Shadow Council. While half of what's written there is focused on how the Dark Portal was originally formed and the tribal nature of Orcish culture, the other half is extremely useful to us in helping define the early Horde and how it came together. The aggressive tribal culture was a serious problem for the initial formation of the Horde. After they conquered their homeworld of Draenor, the individual Orcish clans engaged in greater and greater levels of infighting between each other. Garona's writings document that only the warlocks and their machinations, with the discovery and the opening of the rift to Azeroth, were able to stop the inter-clan warfare and unite enough chieftains to begin forays into this new world for them. This, due to infighting between clan chiefs and 15 years of warfare against the humans, leads to the rise of Blackhand as the first war chief of the Horde, setting a precedent that all clans and peoples would have a single individual as their leader. With Blackhand leading the Horde, and all the while being manipulated and empowered by the Orc warlocks, the first war against the humans of Stormwind and, at the time, Azeroth, comes to a swift and decisive conclusion. During that time, however, we not only learn more about the Orc warlocks, but also their order and their leader, Gul'dan. It turns out that Gul'dan and a group of very high-ranking warlocks and demonically infused servants, called the Shadow Council, had long been communing and learning from powerful demonic entities, with one in particular named Kil'jaeden. They learn greater arts of demonic warlock magics as well as how to summon the dead to them, which had led to another order of orc necromancers called necrolytes to rise up. This Shadow Council and Gul'dan were the ones who, manipulated by demons and Kil'jaeden, had in turn pulled the strings throughout the Horde to bring war to Azeroth. As the first war with the humans was coming to a dramatic conclusion, Gul'dan experienced a massive psychic backlash while attempting to locate the Tomb of Sargeras on Azeroth, now referred to as the Continent versus the Nation. Without his leadership to whisper in Blackhand's ear, there was a massive, if short, civil war within the primary Orcish clan, the Blackrock. Blackhand's loyal warriors were beset by his strongest general, Orgrim Doomhammer, who had seen the opportunity to take power alongside Blackrock's powerful cadre of wolf riders. Without Gul'dan's cunning and magics, Doomhammer took Blackhand's head handily, then proceeded to purge the warlocks and end the manipulation of the Shadow Council and its demon-infused control over the Horde. This served to do 4 things. 1. Doomhammer's leadership of the Horde proved much more effective and efficient, and if not for the later backstabbing of Gul'dan, they would have proved truly victorious over the Alliance in the Second War. Second, the sons of Blackhand, Rend and Maim, took part of the Blackrock clan and split off, forming the Blacktooth Grin clan. Third, Gul'dan was able to convince Doomhammer that the Wolf Riders were secretly allying with Rend and Maim, and were a serious threat to him. As such, Doomhammer had the Wolf Riders captured and disbanded. Lastly, because of the sudden resurgence of infighting between the Orcish clans after the Civil War, ogres were brought in masse from Draenor to act as enforcers, to keep the peace and eventually act as heavy-duty frontline warriors for the Horde, replacing the Wolf Riders. This was the first of many new races that would be introduced to the Horde, changing it from a singular Orcish entity to a multi-layered faction of different peoples. As Doomhammer initiated his Second War, sailing and marching north on the nations of Lordaeron, Ironforge, and Stromgarde, others were included. The next were the Trolls of Zul'Aman, potent berserkers and shipwrights, which taught the Horde more about the layout of the continent of Azeroth, nations, geography, as well as how to better handle raw materials. Seeing the possibility of profit should the Horde win over the Alliance, a Goblin trade prince chose to align with the Horde, bringing needed Goblin engineering skills to their military force. Without warlocks, magical augmentation was needed, which Gul'dan provided in the forms of Ogre Magi, runic-infused ogres suddenly gifted with intelligence and magic, as well as Death Knights, undead Stormwind Knights infused with the spirits of dead necrolites. Finally, the Dragonmaw clan, having a long history of taming great beasts in Draenor, managed to capture the Dragon Queen Alexstrasza herself, thus forcing her dragonflight into fighting for the Horde, but this does not earn any allegiance from them in any way. New allies and greater power didn't stop Gul'dan's treachery, and instead of supporting the invasion of the capital city of Lordaeron, chose to seek the tomb of Sargeras. He took 2 clans with him, the Stormreavers, a small but loyal clan, and the Twilight's Hammer, apocalypse-obsessed orcs and ogres seeking oblivion. Many were ripped to shreds by bloodthirsty mad demons, including Gul'dan himself, and the loss of forces lost the war for the Horde, as the Alliance used the sudden upheaval to push south. Even as the Alliance captured huge parts of the Eastern Kingdoms, the Horde refused to relent, quickly leading to the Siege of Blackrock Spire, where Orcish leadership was quickly crushed and captured. With nowhere else to go, the remnant of the Horde continued retreating back into the Dark Portal, thus creating 2 separate Horde entities: the masses of orcs that were interred across Lordaeron and the Eastern Kingdoms, and those that escaped back to Draenor. While the Horde that did make it to Draenor began a separate incursion on the part of War Chief Ner'zhul, that doesn't lead to the Horde of today, so we're going to focus on the interred orcs in Lordaeron for now. Those captured across Lordaeron and held in camps began experiencing a serious lethargy as the demonic influence that fueled them ran dry. A crisis of faith ensued with these orcs, leading many to give up fighting altogether. The old war chief, Orgrim Doomhammer, having escaped captivity, experiences this lethargy firsthand, seeing his brothers and sisters unable to bear the weight of their existence, but fights it off to hide in the mountains instead. Thrall, a young orc gladiator captured during the Second War, also breaks out of internment, along with the help of a human called Taratha, and finds his people, the Frostwolves. They had hid out in the Alterac Mountains after being exiled during the First War, and knew of another orc clan that still roamed and struck with lightning-fast attacks, called the Warsong. He sought a way to bring life back to and rid the orcs of the terrible lethargy that consumed them. With the Frostwolves, he found that, eventually bringing back the spiritual and shamanistic practices to the orcs and reconnecting them with their past religion before the demons' influence corrupted them. Along with the help of the old war chief Doomhammer, the Frostwolves, and Warsong, Thrall leads daring raids on the internment camps, freeing small groups of orcs every time, and eventually building a sizable fighting force. Doomhammer falls in battle in a full-on assault on the major internment camp, Durnhold Keep, passing the mantle of war chief to the young shaman, along with his armor and the Doomhammer itself. A few months later, a series of short but pointed visits from the Guardian Medivh sets Thrall in motion, leading the orcs to sail for the previously unknown continent of Kalimdor. Along the way, many of the orcs were blown off course, far south of the Maelstrom, and encountered the Darkspear Trolls, a tribe of island trolls that shared a connection to the spirits but mirrored the orcs' growing shamanism. Instant allies, they find the lost continent of Kalimdor, uniting their lost forces after having landed all across the eastern coast of the continent, and end up assisting a race of great bull people called Tauren against brutal and cruel centaur herds. Led by the wise, imposing, and ancient Cairn Bloodhoof, the Tauren are proud, honorable, and nature-loving race made up of wandering tribes of hunters, warriors, and druids that sought a permanent home for themselves. Warcraft 3, which by now we're deep into, culminates with the second invasion of the Burning Legion, a demonic force that originally corrupted the orcs with bloodlust through the Shadow Council. While Thrall leads the orcs, Tauren, and trolls, Grom, Hellscream, and the Warsong clan, which made the journey to Kalimdor as part of the Horde, were tempted once again by the demon's blood, taking it and falling under the control of the Legion once more. Grom and his demonically infused Warsong is fought back, his soul captured, and with the assistance of Jaina Proudmoore and a faction of humans, purged of the demonic corruption. Hellscream and Thrall, united again in wanting to free the orcs from the demon's corruption once and for all, confront the Pit Lord Manaroth, where Grom chooses to sacrifice himself to destroy the Pit Lord for good. After the invasion of the Burning Legion, which we'll cover in another video on this channel, the still nomadic orcs, trolls, and Tauren found a series of larger settlements across Kalimdor. The Tauren have Thunder Bluff, out in the plains of Mulgore. Sen'jin Village, named after the late troll tribal leader, is where the Darkspear settle, and the orcs found the mighty warrior city of Orgrimmar in honor of Orgrim Doomhammer himself. With these settlements, and united with a respect for each other and a desire to live free of oppression, formed the basis of what we currently know as the Horde. One faction remains, the Forsaken, a group of undead that broke away from the Lich King's control, led by Sylvanas Windrunner, and currently living in the fortified Undercity of the former capital city of Lordaeron. Through insidious manipulations of Horde leadership, Magatha Grimtotem's own machinations, and the encouragement of the Earthen Ring to help the hurting Forsaken, they eventually establish a tenuous accord with the Horde. Despite this accord, both Thrall and Cairn have little trust or faith in the once recent servants of the Lich King, keeping Sylvanas herself at arm's length from the rest of the faction. This brings us up to the current state of the Horde, a faction of cast-outs and the persecuted. Those who lacked homes have made their own in the world, establishing a force to advocate for themselves. From the demon-fueled origins of the orcs of Draenor, to the invasions of the Eastern Kingdoms as we know them, to the cities they founded to carve out a piece of the world for themselves, this is the foundation of the Horde. We close this book of Warcraft history here and save the rest for another time. If you enjoyed this feature, please consider subscribing here at youtube.com/theDanNation, as well as joining my Discord at tinyurl.com/Danscord. It's a Discord, but with 100% more Dan. From the Lore Bunker in Boston, Massachusetts, this is Dan wishing you a wonderful and wide world of lore.